Good evening. Welcome to BBC Radio Cumbria for a Monday evening. We're about to celebrate the very best in Cumbrian folk songs, past, present and potentially future, with the expert help this evening of Sue Allen and Steve Wharton, who are pooling their formidable folk resources for a very special evening in Carlisle this Friday. So, delighted that you can be with us. Good evening, Bo.
Hello there.
Good evening.
Oh, and isn't this... We've been reminiscing, haven't we, Sue?
We have,
While you
we
were gassing out there, Steve. The last time you were both here, which was...
The Anderson 250th anniversary of his birth, which was the beginning of February. So we saw you the end of January, just this time of year, 2020.
And we all knew
Just
what
before everything
stopped.
went berserk.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's bringing it all back. And yeah, and I remember you talking about Robert Anderson, the Cumberland Bard, and his connections.
Absolutely. With this building.
Indeed,
Yeah.
yes.
Have you seen his ghost yet?
Not that I'm aware of or
Okay.
felt it.
Okay.
But have you ever felt it when you've been here?
Can't say I have.
No.
No, can't say I have.
Yeah, you're hoping that, Steve, that he might put in an appearance for you to bring some children to come and...
Oh, no, well, Robert keeps himself very much to himself.
There's a story there, though, I'm sure.
So Robert Anderson is, I suppose, he's one of your many areas of expertise, Sue. And
Yeah.
you were here to celebrate his anniversary. It was a bit like the Wordsworth thing.
Well, he was born the same
250
year.
years, wasn't
They
it?
were
That's
born
it.
the same year.
Exactly that. Only you just managed to get in because the whole Wordsworth 250
Yeah.
got derailed, didn't it?
I know.
Exactly.
I know.
And you'd written the book then.
Yeah, which came out in March 2020. You remember what happened March 2020?
Yes.
See, that was all my talks about it over the county, everywhere, just cancelled at a stroke.
And here we are, 3 years on, with connections to Robert Anderson. So many a nod to him over the next 3/4 of an hour or so. But also delving into the very best of contemporary Cumbrian folk music, which is where you, sir, come in the publishing department, because you have a brand new publication just out, Contemporary Cumbrian Folk Songs and How to Write Them.
Oh, yes. Try to get other people to put their ideas down on paper as well. And so the how to write them bit is, well, there's 16 songs in the book. 13 are completely original. 3 are settings of poems to music. One poem by William Wordsworth about the painting of Peel Castle that he took umbrage with, and so it's a setting of elegiac stanzas. And then there's one by John James Lonsdale, which is, I don't know, it might be our only... Well, I'm reclaiming it as a sea shanty for Cumbria.
We could do with one.
Yeah, because we've got such a wonderful coastline, and we haven't got any shanties.
Dearth of shanties.
Yeah, so that's our sea song, and that taps into our Viking heritage as well. And then the other one is an adaptation of a poem by Robert Anderson called The Storm, which I originally monkeyed around with for the Holy Water for Whiskey storytelling show that I did about Lantis Lee. So there's those 3.
Is he allowed to monkey around, Sue, with Robert
He can
Anderson?
do what he likes. That's the whole point about folk songs, is people monkey around with them, as it were, all the time. It's one of the things I wanted to emphasise. I mean, he's in the great tradition of someone like Sir Walter Scott monkeying around with songs, and yeah.
Oh my God! You didn't know you were going to come in here tonight and be compared to Sir Walter Scott, did you?
Or even, be in the same sentence
Mentioned
as the word
in
tradition.
the same sentence. Yes, indeed.
But I've put that in my book as well. I've said, because I have heard other people singing my songs now, and it's really nice.
Gosh.
And I've just said, if you're in the flow and you find that you want to add a bit, because I've done that whilst I've been re-rehearsing these songs. I've ended up adding like a middle 8 to a song, which I'll do a little bit later. So that's not in the book because it's so new. So what I've done is, the book is in A5 format, because that's nice and handy. But then with the book, there's a password in it. Changes all the time. It's like proper Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, fourth page, third word, and you go on my website and you can download the A4 PDFs and all of the updates and the revisions,
right. Oh,
so
my
that it
goodness.
makes it kind of
Dynamic.
yep.
Well, do you know what? It's bringing to mind the art of. I was talking to Taffy Thomas a little bit earlier.
Oh, were you?
Yes, indeed. Who I know you know very well. The art of storytelling. It's a similar thing. It's that oral tradition. Not necessarily tunes that have always been written down straight away. I mean, ultimately they have been. Hopefully, else they'd have been lost, wouldn't they? But there is that idea that, like any story, it varies according to the teller.
But also, I think, and you'll probably agree, even if I do a traditional song, if I perform a traditional song, it's probably one I've been doing for 20 years or so. I'll have changed it over time without even knowing. And then I look at some printed version of that and say, oh, is that the tune? I don't do it like that. You just automatically...
Well, this is one of the things that Ali McGurk, who's transcribed all my songs and also wrote an article about like the early folk song collectors, something she looks at, because she says that, Steve's songs are deceptively simple, but really blooming hard to put down on paper. So what she's done is a kind of standardised version. And she picked up on my style of singing and said, you do this and you do that. And I was like, oh, I thought I just sang. And so she's kind of like done a standardised version, which is great, because I think whenever you're doing a song, whether it's, a cover of a pop song or an old folk song, you always do it in your way, and that's to be celebrated. So in the start of the book, I say, if you're going to do any of these songs, change them around, add your own bits, extend them, give it its own life, and that's where the how to write them part of my book comes in. It's not so much the use this chord and then use that chord or use this structure. It's more, these are the things that I did to give that song its own little unique touch or its own idiosyncrasies that mean that it sounds different to something else, and it just has its own life. And it can be as simple as just the example I use is in the song Heartwood, which had this, the lyrics went along really nicely, and I was just like, I don't like it because they just go along too nicely. And then I heard Bill Lloyd doing a song, and it started, I'm gonna ride that northern rail. I thought, that's it, I'm gonna ride. I need that declamatory kind of start to it. So that's where my Heartwood song is. They kissed their girls on Valentine's morning, then they began their shifts. And it's got more of a draw to the audience. Like, I'm going to hang on this note, and I hope you're going to hang on this note with me. And you draw them in that way. So you're setting up the rhythm, and then you're breaking it. And you can do that with photography or storytelling or music. You set something up and then you just change it so that it gets people's attention.
And you've been doing some great workshops, haven't you, about songwriting? Sorry, I'm not supposed to be interviewing him, I know. But
nobody's interviewing anybody.
That's great.
We're having a crack.
And then the Maryport one you did was very well attended, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, well attended for Maryport. We had 4, which for me is perfect, actually.
But they want to learn. They're wanting to learn how to write songs. And it isn't very often you come across a class of how to write a song.
No.
That's quite unusual.
Well, the first thing I did was I took along quite a few of my other instruments and I asked them to pick up one that they didn't know how to play. Because I think if you've started learning and you know some chord structures, then the first thing to do is unlearn it. And then that gives you a chance to follow the melody or to find something different. And I always say as well, because songwriting's a craft, you've got lots of tools that you need to sharpen before you can really get to work. And so that one idea for a song that you really want to write, park it to one side. Do some other things. Do your preparatory sketches. Work on different things and write some songs that fail, write some songs that you like, write some songs and then just put them away. And by the end of it, you've got this belt of tools where when inspiration hits or you're asked to write something, you know what to do.
You're ready and waiting.
Yeah.
I tell you what I love about just flicking through your book. It's just it's the familiar places.
Yeah.
And the people that are in here. Well, like Hartwood, you mentioned, and we all know we all look at Hartwood. In fact, I've been. Because,
Have you into it?
Well, not actually into it, but alongside, because I know the man whose land it's on. We were doing a farming piece, but we were there. So you get completely different perspective on it from when you're driving along the motorway. And, things like the Look of Eden Hall, these old legends and these places that, and then a bit of dialect as well has gone back.
Well, and the whole of the
that.
Anderson one as well, and the one that I wrote today in the style of Robert Anderson, which is all in Cumberland dialect, but it's about the Cumbria Derby tomorrow night.
Now then, I'm interested to pursue this. In fact, I don't know what Sue will tell us. I don't know if we think that Robert Anderson would be in any way, a fan of sport.
Oh, well, he wrote a very long and detailed poem about all the roisterous, jolly goings-on at Brough races.
I was going to say, I thought there was a race course.
Brough races.
Yes, link to him.
Yeah.
So, yes, so maybe he was quite into the idea of spectator sports.
And you get plenty of wrestling songs as well, and also cockfighting.
Not his particularly, but yeah, there's a broadside on Cumberland wrestlers in Carlisle Local History Library.
Yeah.
And so you've come up with a variation on the folk sporting theme today.
Yeah.
Inspired by this eagerly and awaited and hotly anticipated Cumbrian football derby tomorrow. And of course, these are parts of Cumbria that you've either lived in or know really, really well, Barrow and Carlisle.
Yeah. Well, I've been lucky to live all around the county now, and to poke my neb into all the other bits.
That's a great phrase.
And also I've been doing so much research on my family tree as well. I've found even more places where the Whartons have just, proliferated since the 1590s.
And researching all your tales. I mean, you have a long experience of doing storytelling gigs as well. And you've researched all the legends, which are now feeding into your songs as well.
Yeah.
Great.
And like you say, it's the, when the people are mentioned as well, which is, again, that's the lifeblood of the county. Yeah, we can write about the lakes and the mountains, but it's the people that are the lifeblood and that perpetuate the stories and the ideas and the concepts, and make it fun as well. And like as far as the storytelling tradition in Cumbria goes, I really believe that the actual true tradition of storytelling lies with the landlords of pubs, who would spin a good bit of crack,
like Will Ritson at Wasdale.
Yeah. And the Bishop of Bath, the white stone on the side of Bath, alongside
on the fell.
Yes. You can see that from Fitz Park in Keswick when there's no leaves on the trees, which makes me think somebody painted that because they knew there was loads of tourists in Keswick, and they thought, how can I get them over here? And so they painted it white, and then someone will say, "Oh, what's that? White? Oh, funny you should say that." Right?
There's a good pub over there.
Yeah. So I think it was just an advertising hoarding, and just a very simple one. But it's only when there's no leaves on the trees that you can see it, and you think, oh well, the trees were obviously smaller in those days.
They're always the Cumbria Tourist Board's always wanting to encourage tourism in the off season, in the winter. So
yeah.
Genius idea then.
Yes.
Absolutely. So. And this idea of there being, I suppose, themes that if you go back to Robert Anderson and before, maybe, whether that be themes about people or about the way that they lived or about the kind of pastimes that they indulged in, that still pertain today. So I know that, say, writing about the Cumbrian football derby is very contemporary and modern, but at its essence, it's about a sporting contest. It's about people from places coming together.
Yeah.
And that's, from certain backgrounds, and that's kind of always been there.
Well, Anderson wrote a lot about merry meets and parties and
community events.
And get lyrics like there's Frokes v Newby and Wharton, and he says where they'd come from. And because it's interesting, because he's like, there were some people. Oh, right, okay, yeah, I probably knew them, and it's that resonance that I think made good songs and things that people were interested in. And there was probably at some point songs about uppies and downies, but they've just not been recorded, not been kept, and the I mean, at the moment, John Hastings, that writes the poetry down in Workington. I saw him at Uppies and Downies this year, and he stood on Brig, just in the Cluffocks, just before it all started. 3,000 people around him, just reciting his poem.
Wow.
And who thought you could get away with that in Workington? But he did a cracking job, and it's that kind of live, artwork that celebrates, popular pastimes. There's no reason why we shouldn't have songs about the, Workington Comets and, the Speedway and what have you, or what, say, people like Dan Bewley are up to. He's travelling all over Europe,
Speedway Ace.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Go there, isn't there? Comets and Reds and Speedway.
Well, we have got
just those three words together. You can start.
Has been done before actually in Cumbria.
Oh, has it?
Yeah, Montague Slater, who was from Millom, and he wrote the some libretto for Benjamin Britten.
Oh, he did.
For Peter Grimes.
He did write Peter Grimes, and he knew Norman Nicholson. They looked out of each other's windows across the street at each other.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And Montague's novel, Once a Jolly Swagman, that was turned into a film, and that was about speedway racing, but it's turned into a film called Maniacs on Motorcycles, starring Dirk Bogarde and the first on-screen pairing of Thora Hird and Bill Owen.
The imagination.
Who thought? Last of the Summer Wine.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
So Speedway. We have got a history of Speedway in Cumbria. And that was kind of like the same time as when. It was just after the Stars Look Down was filmed in Great Clifton and Workington, the mining film. Which again, fantastic bit of forgotten filming in Cumbria.
Well, I think we ought to here for football's sake. To get us into the contemporary swing of things.
Well, let me explain what happened here. So I just wanted to... I've been doing some work with the kids at Frizington Community Primary School, and I was just explaining to them about the kind of like the broadside ballads and how some songs were just written really quickly about topical events and then sold on the street. I thought I just want to show them an example of something that can be whipped up really quickly about a topical event. And then this morning I was just on the phone scrolling through a few news things, and the police and Carlisle Football Club were both saying, come and enjoy the football tomorrow, please, no trouble, we don't want any flares yet. And then there was a little postscript FFS. I thought, but it's the English Football League have got this campaign going, for football's sake. Come and have a good time, leave it at that, for football's sake.
And this is For Football's Sake, after Robert Anderson, by Steve Wharton.
The Bluebirds will come up to town on January 31st. They meet have lead yells on the bus to Reedley quench their thirst. With leads to breeds at Brunton Park, the yachts flung up and wide. Let Carroll fans swarm Warwick Road, all cheering on their side. For football's sake, me lads, for football's sake, we'll watch the game, sub up game, for football's sake. History hangs in the air as Carroll blazes back, but the Barrow lads want their points too, it's gonna be good crack. Some dig out free behind their fingers, hoping for half time. Some hope their bellows hate to blow the ball over the line. For football's sake, me lads, for football's sake, we'll watch the game, so pop game, for football's sake. Just like them folks in Shakespeare's time, we'll go through heaven and hell. Who will win the canny game? Well, maybe it's just hard tell. We'll fill the terraces again, we'll sway and shout and roar. The Carroll and the Barrow lads all trying hard to score. For football's sake, me lads, for football's sake, we'll watch the game, support game for football's sake. For football's sake, me lads, for football's sake. We'll watch the game, support game for football's sake.
Genius.
Fantastic. Great tune to set it to.
Well, I was about to say, yes, I think people might have recognised the tune, potentially.
Yeah. Well, it was Anderson used the tune Old Lang Syne for a song of his called Taxes Flung By, which was about it was 1806, and there was rumours that the high taxation caused by the Napoleonic Wars was going to go down. So the answer was, it starts off, come back, let's to Gemma's Gun and taste a swab good yell. Like, go and have some good ale. So that the Carlisle answer was, let's go and have a drink, because taxes are coming down. Or maybe they're not, so let's still go and have a drink.
That tune was popular even the century before that. I mean, Burns obviously used it for Auld Lang Syne, but it was already on the go. Versions of it were on the go, so it's been a popular tune for a very long time.
So where does the connection with, was it William Shields and his operetta Ophelia?
He's
William
much
Shields
later, much later.
So he used it
was,
as well.
It was published in Scotland in the early 18th century, certainly. It was probably on the go before that.
Yeah.
No, Sue, you're not somebody who writes songs, are
No,
you?
I write,
folk
but I
songs?
never write fiction. So I never write songs, and I don't feel I can write music. So I will always slightly alter words without thinking, and I will certainly construct musical arrangements for sure. But I can't write a song. I've never been knowingly written a song.
But as a journalist, because I mean the songs, a lot of my songs are not fictions. I would say a lot of my songs are actually documentaries.
Okay, creative writing then, shall we put it?
Yeah.
It's fascinating it never occurred to me that wouldn't be something.
But the other thing is, there are so many songs that I've still not got round to learning. Why should I add to that heap when there's a stack of them? They're worse than the pile of books at my bedside waiting to be read are the pile of songs waiting to be sung sitting on top of the piano, or songs I used to sing 30 years ago and have forgotten.
Yeah. I'd say some of the answer to that is, as things move on, as different events happen, and as audiences develop and become more sophisticated, and you could also say that sometimes you could do, one of the older songs brilliantly, and the audience just won't get it because those frames of references that are in there are just gone from the audience's minds now.
Well, you just need to do a little tiny introduction to that. My grandson, one of them, could almost, because his father used to sing Lord Bateman to him, nearly 40 verses of it, at bedtime. My grandson George virtually learnt the whole song, and he loved it. And they both love me singing Cumbrian song Benjamin Beaumanier. Do you know it? It's a nonsense song, basically, and it was collected from an old lady in Sedbergh. Have you heard how the wars began, Benjamin Beaumanier? Have you heard how the wars began? Cast us away. Have you heard how the wars began when England fought to a man, and the proud tailor rode prancing away? Of his shearboard he made a horse, Benjamin Beaumanier. Of his shearboard he made a horse, cast us away. Of his shearboard he made a horse, fought him to ride across, and the proud tailor rode prancing away. Of his scissors he made bridle bits, Benjamin, and so it goes on. Tailors were thought to be stupid, so they've cast this kind of stupid figure, and he ends up making a spear out of his needle because he's seen a flea on his knee, and he spears it through the knee, through the ear. And then he uses his thimble for a funeral bell to the death of the flea. So it's complete and utter nonsense. And my grandsons love that. So that's as up to date as you. Goodness knows how long that goes back, that song.
But like you say, it was thought at the time that tailors were meant to be not as intelligent, and so that's a little bit of something that we've lost. You know,
But
we
my
wouldn't immediately
grandsons
think.
don't know that. They just like it as a song because
Oh, yeah.
it's silly,
Yeah.
and because they can learn the tune, and there's a refrain that keeps repeating, and they can join in.
But I mean, you could liken that with American Pie.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there's so many references in that, which, are being forgotten. Because, you know, who's the Joker, like, that turned up with his, you know, there's, the day the music died.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, there's so many different references hidden in that are now being obscured by time. And so that's my argument for
Writing new
keeping,
ones.
keeping the tradition going. And commenting as well. And even if it is to say the things that are happening now have been seen before and before and before, you know, but it's just updating it so that the audiences want slightly different things now as well. You know, certainly in terms of like choruses or the expectation of a middle eight or like an instrumental break. You know, these are all different expectations that have happened in the last kind of like few decades.
You don't do political songs though, do you? Really, you're not a Billy Bragg. Because Billy Bragg takes elements of the tradition, but is always from a very socialist, very political standpoint. Your songs are very Cumbrian, but they're not very political. Do you think?
They're not overtly political, but then again, Cumbria is also very remote from Westminster. And I think, there's been a lot of time where we've just got on with stuff, really. And we've also sometimes felt that decisions are made far, far away from us.
So you haven't got a new song in line about a new Cumbria coal mine that may possibly...
Ooh, this is getting onto dangerous territory.
I worked in Finland for a while. I was a cook in a hotel, and the residents at that hotel, long-term residents, were copper and nickel miners. And so I was there kind of like chatting with people who were very involved with modern mining. So I have got my own thoughts about the the Cumbrian mine and who are actually going to benefit from the jobs that will be created there. And it will certainly be people who have got degrees and MAs in modern mining techniques or who have been practicing them. There's not going to be jobs for, every, Tom and Mick with his shovel.
Well, there's definitely a song in there somewhere, Steve.
Well, why don't you pool your resources in this on that topic? And then Sue, you would have a partner in crime to help you get over your whatever it is that holds you back from writing your first song.
Yeah.
And Steve would enjoy someone who, has all that rich tradition behind them.
And I think what's holding me back is the fact that I haven't yet learned all the hundreds of songs that I want to yet. I've got to do that. I think it's like, do I buy another book or do I really have to read that pile beside my bed?
And when we say these untapped musical gems, will they all be gems?
Oh no, I have a long list of gems that I want to sing, but you also need performance opportunities to do them. Mm-hmm. And I used to play in a ceilidh band for 20 odd years, and Mike in the band would, if we ever got the folk club gig or maybe during a ceilidh, we might do some songs together, and Sally on her flute, Mike on bass or guitar. And that was great, especially if I didn't have to play my guitar or anything else. Then that was wonderful, but we hadn't got the contexts in which to play it.
Yeah, that's something that I was very aware of when I kind of like started putting the Cumbrian set together, and so really I've always had this eye when I'm songwriting of, can this song be performed anywhere? And the little tour that I've done to kind of like promote the songbook, we started off at Plug and Play in Penrith, which is a fantastic evening. Starts with an open mic and then goes to a featured performer, so you've got a good listening audience. And then I had 2 pub gigs. I was at the Drovers in Monkhill and then the Crafty Bar. So, not as much chance to do your talking and what have you. People want to hear a good song. It's their night out. And then...
Wallpaper music?
Sorry?
Being wallpaper music?
No. If you craft something and you present it in a way that does get people's attention, you will be listened to. You can't just go in though with the expectation that you're going to be, kind of like listened to. You have to work at the way that you introduce it, the actual structure of the song. I always try and do like good choruses that are often they boil down to a single line that's repeated. And I try and get audiences able to sing along on the first hearing, even without telling them what the chorus is.
You did that very well at the Ioby gig recently.
Thank you. Yeah, well, my training ground for that was when I had a band in China. And
as you do.
Well, yes, we've been in Finland already. So 5 minutes later, we're now in China.
I was living in China for a couple of years, and I started doing a lot of learning about songwriting. I was watching a lot of Howard Goodall videos. He's got some brilliant videos on YouTube about kind of like the songwriting theory of the Beatles and such like.
He's great, he's Howard.
And so I started, watching a lot of his, and also the that great documentary came out, Searching for Sugar Man, and some brilliant songs in there as well. I thought, okay, I need to boil down what it is that people kind of like enjoy and what they will like latch onto on a night out. Because again, it is their night out. They're in the pub, they're buying the drinks. You are there. You're not just wallpaper music. It's it's something a bit more symbiotic than that.
Something reciprocal.
Yeah. So part of my deal is don't do overcomplicated long choruses if you want people to join in.
I only do miserable songs. Benjamin Bone
I'll teach you
is an
some major
exception.
keys then.
In general, the songs I love are the real miserable ones.
But
Deaths, murders, and a good minor key and a nice
a proper
mode.
lament.
Which is great, but the question is, how often do you want to perform? Then it's having that mixed bag,
you do. If I was performing more, I know I'd need a mix. Yes.
I mean, when I had a folk band here called Heard Us, we used to have a little rule of how we would do our sets, and it was right. Just do a cover, something that everybody knows. Then do a cover, but do it in a way that monkeys around with it. Then do an original song, and then just repeat that, and the audience kind of like latched onto it, and they knew that if we did an original, they were like, not too keen about this, then they would go and get a drink, and then they knew we'd be playing something that they knew the next time. And so that was nice, but the evolution of that is that now I've just got full evening of songs, and the songs that are in my songbook aren't even half of the songs I've written.
You have so many songs as well that you can't get to sing now.
And he keeps writing more.
And, I know.
Yes. And the other thing is, you were talking about simplicity being the key there, and often just like one line. And it occurred to me when you were talking about that is the perfect scenario when working with young people, and particularly with children. And of course, children being the future, you would hope that you could possibly engage, attract, get children to take the folk song bait, and I mean there is that thing, especially with very young children, they love, like Sue was describing with her grandchildren, they love a song that's got a daft story in it. They love something that's got just one that they can sing without too much effort. And that thing of everybody singing together, and the fact that they're joining in, they love it. And that is maybe that's where the future lies. Yeah,
well, they've been doing a project recently in Frizington with Frizington Community Primary School. Shout out to them. Hello, Year 6. And they've been doing their Cumbria
Should
Award,
be in bed.
And they're 10 and 11. It's okay, and they're doing their Cumbria Award. So we start off learning a little bit about William Wordsworth, who was born just up the road from where they're at school, just up in Cockermouth, and then they learnt about Wordsworth's love of reading and how he clubbed together with his friends to buy the full 4 volumes of the Arabian Tales, like, 'cause when they found out that that's that they existed, it'd be a bit like having only ever come across Baby Yoda, and then realising there's the whole of Star Wars to explore as well. So it's the equivalent of that. And then, so we learned a little bit about Wordsworth, and then we started today learning about Robert Anderson and about how he was born here in Carlisle. Was involved in calico printing, working as a print designer, and then his first song that got popular, Lucy Gray of Allendale, played that. Thankfully, Peter Michael Rowan did a little version of it for me, and
who is a legend?
Yeah,
in his
so
lifetime.
Played that to the kids, and then we played another one by Dave Camlin, the Canny or Cumberland. And it was just a compare and contrast, and it's like, well, what language is he using? They agreed it was, Lucy Gray was in Standard English, a slightly older Standard English, but then Canny or Cumberland was in dialect, and it just felt more Cumbrian. Like, and they really got into it, and they said this is more music for dancing to, and it's got more of a bite to it, more of a real good feel about it. And so we started looking at the rest of the dialect songs, and so we did our own version of Young Susie, which I found the words to, and I love it because it's a bit of a list song. It says all the things that Young Susie is, and then going through all the dialect words, and I was explaining them to the kids. But even myself, I looked through the words, and there was this one, Watana. I thought, Watana. And it clicked. Watana. Like, want to know. It's just a contraction. Same as now we would say, I want to do this. So, in fact, in the class today, I actually played them, Eddie and the Hot Rods, do anything you want to do. Because I said, if we're contracting the words, what are we doing? What do we mean as a lyricist when we contract the words? It means we want this song to be fast. I explained all about the tradition of like the stamping down the clay floors at Cumbrian parties for the clay dobbins and what have you, and so they really got into it. And so it's a slightly faster version than you might hear of Young Susie, but they really got into it, and also they agreed that saying the dialect words felt a lot more natural to them as well. And there were some that they didn't know, but a lot of the others, the feel, they really enjoyed. So they did really well. So well done Year 6, because they learnt and recorded this song in like 40 minutes.
Let's hear it.
Young Susie is a bonny lass, a canny lass, a tidy lass, a metal lass, a hearty lass, as any man can see. A clean young lass, a well-spoke lass, a woodland lass, a good young lass. I want to know how it came to pass, she's made a fool of me. As time working, plowing, sowing, eating, drinking, threshing, mowing, seeing, greening, never knowing what I've done a deed. I was this thing, and I thought I had tried to speak, but tried in vain until to seek, forsaken lass is she. A jet black hair, her eyes are brown, of the angels though you throw and frown, though her cheeks and cherry mouth are far sweet to see. As time working, plowing, sowing, eating, drinking, fresh and mowing, seeing, greening, never knowing what I've done a deed. Oh, could I put her in a song to hear her praise the hill day long? She would concert to Curtigan, less beautiful than me. But I can neither rhyme nor rig, love makes yet second coward slave. I better fast sleep in my grave, but all that might be. As time working, plowing, sowing, digging, writing, threshing, mowing, seeing, greening, never knowing what I've done a deed, what I've done a deed.
That is Young Susie, performed by Year 6 from Frizington School. Wow. That was so impressive.
They did well, didn't they?
Didn't they just?
Yeah. So, and they they really powered it along, and they got into the all the different words, and so that's what we're going to be working on for the next kind of like another 7 weeks. We're going to be exploring different aspects of like the dialect poets, and then how musicians now are writing about Cumbria, and just coming up for a visit to Carlisle as well. Like go to the cathedral, to Poets' Corner, and then come to Tully House, learn about the Reivers, and then learn some of the Reiver songs. So it gives them a real good swathe of Cumbrian history as well. Just to the whole project is to kind of give school kids a chance to get a bit of pride about being from Cumbria, and to realise what it means to be from this area and what Cumbria actually stands for.
I thought you would like that, Sue. I thought, oh, this is going to be music to Sue's ears, because, you're born and bred and celebrate it and love it.
Well,
and
so's he born and bred.
Well, yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
To the end of the county, then. Yeah. And it's always annoyed me that the Lake District was inscribed for its cultural heritage, and the inscription document nowhere mentions music, and yet we've got all this stuff, and a whole load of tunes that Lakeland fiddlers played. We've got a massive, quite original repertoire of stuff in Cumbria, heritage of stuff. Hardly anybody knows about it by thee and me, Steve.
Yeah, well, this is the whole reason for getting the book out and doing the tours and making the music more accessible.
Yeah, and getting together, the pair of you, to celebrate in Carlisle on Friday evening at Bookends in Castle Street. Cakes and ale, an evening of Cumbrian folk music starting at 7:30. Only costs £6, and that includes a drink and money off either of your books as well.
I'll be showing a little PowerPoint so people can look at pretty pictures on the book. They can see what Robert Sanderson looked like and what his music looked like, and here's his actual flute and his whistle. So I'll be doing 10 minutes of that, and then some of the songs that aren't Anderson's. Maybe Tarry Wool about shearing sheep, maybe. Oh, we'll see.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, isn't it? The Cumbrian, crafts may be the wrong word here. Cumbrian professions, Cumbrian...
The industries.
Yes.
Well, it was not like a good clipping. Sheep clipping was a big thing. They were big also celebratory things.
The mills. I mean, look at Shadden Mill and how many people really know, what that was for and why it was here, and all the industries that have meant that a lot of people's families moved into Cumbria because we've always had a dearth of people. We've always needed that injection. And the tragedy is that a lot of the families that moved in for certain industries, as those industries dwindled, they moved out. And also they took some of the intangible heritage, like the songs, with them. So that's why we haven't got much in the way of like mining or maritime.
It's your next book, Steve. It's your next book.
Well, maybe it's aye. But again, the book, the bookshop concert is another chance to play these songs. So that's what I was talking about before in terms of making the opportunities. And so it was during that lockdown period when I realised that all of the stories and the songs could have this second life in printed form. So off the back of the 28 Days Later podcasts and then the film, the At Home in the Steep Places documentary I did, which were all under 28 Days Later. I then
that was Bill Peascod, wasn't it?
Yeah. I then set up the publishing company. And so I've got Sil Wedderth out, tale of a Stone Age Cumbrian girl who starts questioning her tribe's beliefs and ultimately builds the first stone circle. And that's mixed in with a little bit of space science, because what is a stone circle after all? It's there for observing celestial bodies. And I've got a feeling as well, I didn't write it this way, but I really think that this character, Sil Wedderth, is, I think she's autistic. I think that's what gave her the drive to ask the questions that nobody else was asking.
And meanwhile, I'm researching and will ultimately be writing about the sword dances that was here, the sword dancing of Cumbria and folk plays, sword dance plays. That's my current research, moving on from Anderson into something completely different.
Oh, well, that's fine. Cause
I'll come back and talk to you
please,
about that.
yes. Well, we need to do a proper sword dancing special, I reckon. Don't you? Yes, we could.
Well, with Frank Leon, who makes rapper swords.
Exactly that. That was something that was on our agenda pre-COVID and which got shelved.
Well, I can talk about Cumbrian links to swords, and he can tell you all about the northeast ones and all the swords he's making for teams across the world. So, yeah.
There we go, another dimension. And I know you mentioned earlier that sea shanties weren't particularly a Cumbrian thing. We've got a bit of a dearth of them. However, we don't have a dearth of songs with flavour of the sea, which is what we're going to end with, a song called Tipping the Beam, which celebrates the amazing heritage of half netting.
Yeah, well, this was inspired by my friend Fiona Stoddart of Solway Connections. She does these brilliant tours, and she told me all about the history of the Solway Bay, and so I put that into a song. But I wanted to capture those 1,000 years of history, but from one perspective, and that was the perspective of a half netter. So yeah, Tipping the Beam. Seen raiders in longships that glide and lurch, and soldiers carry a sick king to church. Was stood with my half-net in the Solway Firth, braced against the running tide for all that I'm worth. Wait till the salmon are running downstream. Into the poke, then I'm tipping the beam. Into the poke, then I'm tipping the beam. Seen reivers guiding cattle across the Wath, and the marcher lords bear down with their wrath. While stood with my half-net in the Solway Firth, braced against the running tide for all that I'm worth. Wait till the salmon are running downstream. Into the poke, then I'm tipping the beam. Into the poke, then I'm tipping the beam. I've seen the quarters fall, and I've felt the thinning shore. Well, stood with my half-net in the Solway Firth, braced against the running tide for all that I'm worth. Wait till the salmon are running downstream. Into the poke, then I'm tipping the beam. Into the poke, then I'm tipping the beam. Into the poke, then I'm tipping the beam. Into the poke, then I'm tipping the beam.
Brilliant. Oh yes.
Great
Oh
stuff.
yes. Oh, it was, and I know there are other verses to that as well that
yeah,
evoke, more of the
short version
history
of that one.
of the Solway Firth, like the bridge across the Solway. And this is what I love
My
about this.
grandmother remembered that bridge. Yeah.
My granddad used to go to school in Annan.
Really?
Yeah, across that bridge. So
fantastic.
there you are. Yes, but isn't it lovely? Because it evokes things like that. It makes us think of family or people that we know, places that we know, all of that. And you're right, it makes us celebrate it all. What a celebration it's been tonight. It's been such good crack and such good fun. We could
Absolutely.
have carried on, couldn't we? But
Endlessly.
yes. Listen, have a fabulous night on Friday. I know, Steve, you're in Lancaster on Saturday as well.
Yeah, Saturday the 11th
And-
with Oliver Cross and Oliver Savandi.
Well, we will reconvene, I hope, at some point.
And I shall be talking about Robert Anderson and Cumbrian songs at Maryport Litfest.
Oh, I need
at
to
the
do yes.
beginning
we
of
need to-
March.
Fantastic.
On the BBC Sounds app, on your smart speaker,
Play BBC Radio Cumbria.
and on your radio.
The sound of Cumbria is
BBC Radio Cumbria.